Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
Hit your mic. There you go.
Call the meeting to order. First item of business are minutes from last month, February 9th meeting.
I'll move to approve them.
Second.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the 239 minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Paul, second.
Second.
Ted, all in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me, on the new business, hazard mitigation plan.
So we've been working on the hazard mitigation plan.
Mike.
Jeepers. Well, they can hear me. I got the camera here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, you can't hear me? All right. Maybe try this. So we've been working on the hazard mitigation plan, and Colleen and I read through the draft already, and we sent it back to Tetra Tech with, I don't know, a slew of comments. So they're going to be looking through those comments, revising, and then there should be a draft going to the steering committee probably next week, I think. They'll review it. And then I think around April, we send it to the state for their review. And there's also like a public comment period in between there. So within the next like month or two, there'll be really some movement on getting this completely done. So it actually goes to the state first.
What agency the state reviews that?
Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
So they actually review it first and then approve it. And then the towns and villages can then approve it after. So the state won't approve it. We can't approve it until the state does, basically.
Okay.
So as of right now, that's where we're at. We're just waiting to get those updates and then have the steering committee review it.
So there would be recommendations for some actions to be taken in the towns.
Yeah, so each town had to do 2 action items.
Okay.
So towns and villages. The only town that did not was Oxford. So they have not given us anything, literally nothing. So they won't, that's weird. They won't have a section in the hazard mitigation plan. It'll be blank. So that way, when the town decides they want to do that, they can be inserted in there. But they're going to have to go through literally the same process we just did by themselves to get in there. So they were the only one.
Questions for Shane on that?
Is that town and village of Oxford both or
Just the town.
So the towns would be submitting for the village as well? Is it?
No, the village does their own.
They do?
Yep.
So you got that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no further questions on that, we're on to transportation.
So transportation, we've been working with Rural Health Network Get There. We've had a number of calls on the 511 New York rideshare. So there's actually a kiosk that you can sign up for a rideshare van pool. So if you have an employer that wants to do this, if there's 3 or 4 people from a certain employer that want to do a ride together, they can coordinate using this program, and it'll set up a ride together. So one of them will drive, the other ones will ride with them. And I'm not sure if there's like a pay structure with that or not, but that currently is in the Eaton Center, and it's been rotating. Steve Palmentier has been rotating it throughout the county. So it started at SUNY Morrisville. It's now at the Eaton Center. I think the plan next is to bring it either to Chenango Memorial Hospital or one of the other businesses. I'm not sure. So we've been working on that. We did have a phone conference with a company called Cricket, Circuit, not Cricket. And they have electric, like large golf carts that are enclosed, and they can do rides within 2 or 3 miles. So we've been talking about the possibility of that, but we're not sure if we would have enough ridership here in Norwich to make that worthwhile.
things are like street legal to go down?
They are. Yep. They'll go about 35 miles per hour, but you'd have to pace a driver. So you figure, by the time you get all the costs that, they do all the costs, but they'll charge you for how much, the service basically.
So like a taxi.
It is. It's like a taxi. But you figure if you're paying someone $35,000 to be a driver, plus the insurance and all this other stuff that you're paying this company to do, it's going to be probably like a $60,000, $70,000 price tag for the entire year. So, you know, to number of rides, if you're selling, you know, $1 a ride, it's going to add up
Yeah.
pretty slowly.
Yeah, I had gotten stuff like that at the town, and for Guilford, and I said, you know, it really doesn't apply to the town because we're too rural. But they were looking at a fee of $24 a month, like a user fee that you could have a scooter, something reserved. It would make a lot more sense if it was in Norwich or something like that. I don't know why they kept contacting the town. I said, you know, I have no idea where we put it. I don't think it makes any sense for us to do that.
Yeah, and the one problem is there's no charging stations in Norwich. The only ones we have are in Sherburne, so that kind of cuts that out as well. That's it for transportation.
How many responses did you get from people that were willing to drive?
I don't know. It gives us through the 511 program.
Okay, so
They're getting the information.
okay, on the climate smart communities.
So the resolution passed for registering as a climate smart community yesterday. So our plans moving forward are, once we get that resolution, we can put it into the system and officially register on the website. And I've made contacts with kind of like our coordinator that we'll speak to back and forth at the state who like leads the program. So I have that, and then tomorrow we're meeting with Adam Flint and Terry Carroll about clean heating and cooling action that's within the program. So we'll just speak through that, like get more information and see how feasible it would be to do that in the county. And then, so we've also looked at everything that the county's already done in the past, and we've already completed about half of the points we need to be a bronze certified climate smart community. So that's cool. So like some examples are like from when the county did those 4 high impact actions with clean energy communities program, like the benchmarking, which is just tracking all the energy use for all the county office buildings. Something like that we've already completed, and we already have all that documentation. So once we can register, I can upload that, and we get like points for that automatically. You don't have anything we can do. And then another example is like the hazard mitigation center, since we're in progress with that. Once that is accepted, approved, then that will also get us points when we have that approved. So those are just some examples of some of the actions that will get us points and move forward for the county.
Great. Any questions for Colleen on that? You don't have Steve today.
He's here.
Or he is here. Okay.
Had a little trouble getting on, but we're here.
Here you are. Go ahead.
What I'm working on, I've been doing some work on the transportation issue. 511 New York has a kiosk for ride sharing. We've had that at the Morrisville campus. We just moved it to the Eaton Center. While they were moving it, they did a software upgrade. I spent 3 days trying to get the darn thing running. It finally wound up having to take the back off the machine, plug a USB keyboard in, and edit some of the code, and away we go. So it's in use now, and it will go from there to Shabani, and from Shabani probably up to the Rogers Conservation Center, and then hopefully, we'll put someplace else around the region. Still doing a bunch of work on workforce development. The project that I ran over at Corning, MACME, and the Business Council of New York State, both are interested in that. We will be having a meeting with MACME on April 1st and Morrisville with Unison and Shabani on the topic, about how we take this. They want to go statewide with it and have other colleges model what Morrisville was doing. I think that's a pretty powerful statement about what we've done. Also around workforce, 2 weeks ago, we had a conference call with the Corning Foundation, and they have come to the conclusion that they're going to fund $25,000 a year for 3 years contingent upon us finding matching funds to build out the SME Prime program at the Unadilla Valley School. And part of the conversation, when we had that conversation, we also had the principal from the Pine Bush School District on, and they have been using their SME Prime equipment, they've been doing adult ed similar to what I was doing with the Tooling U modules there. Morrisville, SUNY Broome, and Corning Community College are all interested in bringing that model to our schools and giving college, maybe not credit, but at least micro credentials in that arena, which I think is also a good thing to have happen here. And we wouldn't have done that if I hadn't been hadn't taught those courses at Corning and Oneonta, because they're just so pleased with how that worked for them that they think it would be a great model for the whole region to help our workforce. I've been working with Martha Ryan doing some studies on employment opportunities in our region. It's fascinating, right? There are literally 100 entry-level jobs that are open. The hard part for kids is how to find them, right? I'm finding jobs just because somebody will text me. Do you know somebody that could fill this position? Some of them are on websites. Some of them crop up through online searches. A lot of them are showing up, at the temp agencies. Sometimes they're on the company website, but very often they're not. Particularly entry-level jobs. When I've talked to heads of personnel departments, the problem with that is they get every single Yahoo in the world applying, and they don't want to waste their time on that. So they'd rather go through, try to find people through the employees, the current employees that they have, or through the social networks that they have, which is really interesting. Martha's doing an online job fair next week, and I actually did a recording for her on some of the ways that you go about getting jobs. Martha has people, young people calling me right now or contacting me looking for internships. One kid is at Clarkson, and he's got a 3.9 GPA in his second year of an engineering program, and he doesn't know how to look for that job, right? He doesn't know how to look for that internship. And because I have some connections, I told him yesterday to go look at all the websites for all the companies he's interested in so that he has some background knowledge of them, and then I will make contacts for him where there's no entry point on their own websites. That's just another one of those interesting dilemmas I think that we have. I worked with SUNY Broome putting together a DACM committee on mechatronics. Raymond was a big piece of that also. Mike's wife's husband or sister's husband was part of that because he works for a large electrical engineering firm in the Binghamton area. He brought in a couple of people, so it was a pretty good conversation. They're going to build out a mechatronics program, and there are jobs in that field open at every single sawmill like Bailey Lumber in our region. There are mechatronics jobs opened at Corning. There's one open at Chobani or two at Chobani. There's one at Alvagen. There's one at Cary Bioscience. And that same skill set could be used at all the assembly areas at Raymond or, any place like that. So I think that those are all just, pretty interesting things. The other thing I've been doing is a lot of work still around this idea of entrepreneurship. Cliff Owen, I don't know if any of you know Cliff, but he's actually a professor of business, adjunct professor at SUNY Binghamton, and he also brokers businesses. We were in a conversation yesterday he's trying to sell a business for somebody out in Colorado, and I actually hooked him up with Worth Snyder, who was the gas drilling guy here, who's now running a private investment firm, looking for investment dollars. But Cliff and I sat through a program by Co-Starters, and I would suggest any of you who are interested, you should just Google their site and look at it. It's really about how you build an entrepreneurial community. We're thinking that we may do some grant writing around that for a regional effort. It would include Broome County, because Broome County is very interested in a project like this. Co-Starters is pretty cool. And the other place that I've been doing, attending a lot of programs put out by the National Business Incubation Association in BIA. And they've actually done studies for ARC, the Appalachian Regional Commission, on how to best practices for business incubation in rural communities. It was funded by ARC and funded by the Tennessee Valley Authority. But I think that's something that we, after COVID, it's something that we really should pay some attention to. I would like to run a program like that, and I think it would feed people into our chamber. And I think it would help bring young people here, right? But it's a different kind of thing you're trying to do. I have one young person in our region, I shouldn't say young, but much younger than I am, who came to me a couple weeks ago because of an entrepreneurship program Martha Ryan put on. She wants to bottle a sauce that she sells in her restaurant, or she serves in her restaurant. And I set up a conference call with Brad Tree at the Southern Tier Startup Alliance. He was able to lead us to a couple of co-packers that would actually produce, bottle, and ship that product for her. One of them is actually associated with Morrisville. The other one's out in Watkins Glen. And we will be, I get my second COVID shot a week from tomorrow. And once I feel a little safer out in the world, she and I are going to go visit both the co-packer sites. And we have another person that I've been working with in the area out of Sherburne, who makes, of all the odd things, accessories for model cars that are radio controlled, that they race. Can you imagine that there's a market for that? And he's actually so busy printing these with a 3D printer that he doesn't have CAD skills, that he cannot keep up with the design work he has. And now I hooked him up with the professor of mechanical engineering at Morrisville, and the professor and he are working out how to maybe have the professor do some of the reverse engineering and design, and then how to have some of the students at Morrisville participate in that. And then late last year, I worked with a kid who's actually building again, took him to Brad Tree, but he wants to develop board games. And I helped him design the board using Publisher. We got them printed on heavy cardstock, and I 3D printed the tokens for him. And he's out experimenting with that, seeing what the market is for a product like that. So those are the kinds of opportunities I see that we could pursue from this. And it's a different way of approaching, I think, entrepreneurship and economic development in our region. Questions?
I guess, anything else, Shane?
Just one thing is, yesterday I was appointed airport administrator, so I don't know if you guys want an airport update on the agenda from now on, or up to you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Give us an update.
All right. So right now we just had airport steering yesterday, and Frank always does like a monthly report of what's going on at the airport. So in February, there were 3 business flights. One was NBT, and there was a couple other. It was Diaz, which Mike Posson, he flies around. There was one other flight, I think it was, or no, Mad River is Mike. I don't know. There's different names, Diaz, Mad River, and all sorts of different names. But so we had 3 business flights in February. We've also seen Chenango Memorial Hospital using the airport because of the building project. I think their helipad is either out of service right now or just hasn't been being used. So Frank saw the other day there was an ambulance showed up with the helicopter and did some transitioning, and so that's nice to see that they're there. There's been a few comments online where there's been some black helicopters taking off at night, so they've been using the airport as like a landing practice. So sometimes different companies like Lockheed or some of these bigger air aviation will use our airport to test some stuff, So in the past month, we've sold about 400 gallons of fuel, so that's pretty good. But we are seeing a little bit more activity. But so yeah, I'll do an update for next month.
Okay, we're on the privilege of the floor.
I'm done.
Colleen?
Nothing.
George?
Uh-oh. Just some inquiries that I have, at the county board level, we've had some difficulty with our call-in that people can't hear what's going on. Just questions on the Zoom platform that you're using. Is that something the county has, department has? What are the parameters on it?
So we have it as a department. Each department would, I mean, we can use it for the board meeting, absolutely. And basically what it does is it sends out, we got to set up the meeting, and we send out an invitation where there's a link and there's also a phone in option. So you can do either one. It records to the cloud. So as soon as this meeting is over, within about a minute, I'll get an email back at the office saying, here's your recording. It's got a link. You can go to it. You can share it, whatever. There's a lot of different settings where you can allow people to join in different capacities. So if you wanted to do it this way, you could have, each of the supervisors could be considered a presenter, and then everybody else would be a guest, and you can make it so that only presenters can speak. So, I mean, that'd be an option for allowing the public to be part of it if you wanted to. There's a password setting, there's all sorts of different platforms. I know Carrie's used WebEx before for presentations. That's another option. Ours, I think, is $119 for 6 months. So it's
Okay,
not bad.
So you should have a large number of participants as well as a pretty generous time frame that you can use.
Yep. And then what's nice about this is, because we're using this webcam, we're not being charged a phone bill.
Sure.
I mean, other people that are calling in, there's probably going to be a phone bill associated with it because it's not a 1-800 number you have to call into.
Right.
But yeah, it's pretty
Now,
easy.
the other question I have is, are you connected wirelessly in this building, or we're corded in?
I'm corded in right now because the wireless system isn't available because of the cyber.
Okay. Continuing. Charging stations. I know it's something the county may be looking at. I've been told the city of Norwich is also looking at that, particularly in the city. So that may be something we want to coordinate with them and try to come up with the most ideal location. But it's probably going to be beneficial overall if we have something in this area, particularly on Route 12.
Yeah, two of the spots we've been looking at is as part of the DRI application that would have been submitted this year had it been not for COVID, was to have one at SUNY Morrisville and another one at the Classic Car Museum. And Morrisville had actually been supportive of the idea of having their classes actually administer that, because they have the renewable energy program up at the main campus. So
okay, that's good information. The broadband last week, there was a webinar on broadband, just bringing that to attention of anybody listening. We did have participation. Shane was there. I was there. Supervisor Wanzer was there. I think it was pretty informative as far as where it's going. I think the big challenge here is always building, I guess, that backbone into Chenango County so that we can have a reliable link. And the hard thing for us is to know what the different vendors have built out. I've heard some good news from a board member in the town that they have fiber to his house. And they're really pleased that they have that, because his wife does daycare, and she said they've had 13 kids on at a time doing their Zoom lessons for school, and the system has worked really fine. And the speeds and reliability have been good with that. And unfortunately, that's information we don't have as far as where it's going.
right, and we can't have it because of the proprietary nature. The only problem with broadband right now is the DOT has started a new permitting process called PERM 75, which would require any entity to pay $25,000 per mile to run fiber up and down their right of way. So for instance, Tompkins County just was awarded an application to expand broadband, and part of that would go up and down a state highway. So out of a $400,000 grant, with that new permitting process, they would have to pay half of it to DOT.
That's ridiculous.
So
and the other piece of that is, from my understanding, there's going to be ongoing yearly fees for that,
there are.
which are going to greatly increase the expense. And my thoughts are, if New York State really wants to promote broadband development, that is one of the most counterproductive
Right.
Permitting fees that they've set up.
Like one agency wants to do one thing, another agency's like.
Right.
"Nope, but this
And
one."
all of our legislators are aware of that. We've reached out to all of them, and there's actually a proposed bill that's going to be coming through the assembly to make it so that fee would not be applicable to municipalities that are running fiber for, residents, basically.
The last thing, which is, I don't think really falls in the purview of planning, but it's dealing with EMS countywide. A couple years ago, a committee was set up. Charlie Mastro from Sherburne chairs that committee. I think we're actively working on trying to come up with some, I'll say, phased in solutions to that, as well as seeing what's affordable to try to improve EMS service in the county, both dealing with the number of providers that are out there and where they're located. I know there's been a lot of challenges today, particularly with having the number of EMS workers in the different communities and the ability to afford ambulance service. But that's something we're looking at. And once again, we're going to be looking at grants. I talked to Shane briefly. We're going to have to update our shared services plan that we had done to include EMS. And that's something that I'm going to try to move forward with. And I'll catch up with Shane pretty quickly on that in order to be able to apply for a shared services grant, which could help us fund some of those startup costs. I guess that's it for today. Thank you.
George, I was wondering, I know it hasn't even been signed yet, but the bill, the COVID relief bill, there's supposed to be money in there for broadband and underserved areas, right? You know anything about that yet?
We don't have the details on how that's going to work or where that money is going to come from. Even at the the county level, county will be receiving funds. Towns will be. The information we got from Bill Crane yesterday was that the money for towns is going to be coming through the state. So I don't know how that process is going to work. And the same thing for broadband. You know, the governor's budget has a proposed initiative on the mapping for broadband to try to make sure that those things are more accurate than what we currently have. So I'm going to say right now it's going to be a wait and see. And my understanding is there's going to be a fair amount of money available, and hopefully we're going to be able to access that. It's the same thing with the Clean Communities and the Smart Communities programs. I think we need to move forward with those and to whatever ability, try to access the grant funding for the benefit of the county. Okay.
If I may comment on broadband, it is very dynamic right now. Like Preston, the whole town of Preston has been wired by Frontier. And I can recognize that. And I actually drove the roads to ascertain that was true. In the last quarter of 2020, they wired most of McDonough and a good portion of Smithville. And I just know this because my wife keeps a horse in Smithville, or 3 horses in Smithville. And every time I drive over there, I take a different route and I look to see, you know, what has been where they've run fiber. So my thought on that was the possibility of actually having our town highway superintendents, at least in the case of Frontier, report back to us on what's been strung. Now, having the wire on the pole, the fiber on the pole doesn't mean that it's to the house yet. And I had that experience with them, right? They ran fiber to my house, and then it took them or right to my pole, it took them another 10 weeks to get the fiber into my house. And then it took them half year to bury it. And they didn't bury it until my dog chewed through it once. But, you know, we could determine where it is hung with our town highway superintendents, I would think.
I think I'll reach out to, I know in our town, we did the same thing. We've got a lot of build out. I know where some of it is just driving the roads, but I think that's a good idea. And we can try to get that information back to the county planning department.
Good idea.
We have talked to Clarity Connect as well, and they're proposing to do what's called an overbuild. And what they would do is they would do wireless from Syracuse to the PA border, from Delaware County all the way out to Tioga County. Now, that's what they're proposing. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. And it's always good to have multiple service providers, just because, you know, you want competition, you know. So I think we're starting to see some changes. And as much as the FCC maps are wrong in many ways, they do show what's available there. In a lot of cases, it's showing that we have satellite here. Now, if you know about anything about satellite, is that there's data caps. So you could watch maybe 2 or 3 movies and then you're restricted. It's also a high possibility if it's raining or cloudy, you're not going to get service. And the speeds are only as good as the backbone that it's connected to. So it's available, but is it reliable? Again, accessible. And then the other thing too, with the new stimulus bill, there is going to be money available through the FCC for providers to offer reduced rates. So hopefully Frontier and some of our other locals will be buying into that program to offer those really reduced rates for people here. But I have to wait and see.
Okay, let's finish up from the floor. Paul? Did you want to say something?
Just, do you have any, updates on the vacancies? We still need a supervisor, right?
Yeah, we haven't had any interest from anybody.
Okay.
And I've reached out, talking to anybody who I can possibly think of to be able to do it.
Steve, you have anything else?
I think I'll just add that the Oxford School District is working on a big project, part of their building project, to build a fab lab. Siemens, who I've talked about before and who I work with on some of these projects, they're funding having ties come in and help design the fab lab for them. Carrie's part of that because, again, it's going to have a entrepreneurial piece that's going to go with it. And I was on the phone with them and the local or statewide representative for the makers movement. And we're talking about equipment right now. So that should be interesting. It's going to be, again, open to students and to adults. And, hopefully we can move some things along.
Mr. Thompson?
Question for Carrie. I know this is railroad. Been a lot of money invested in that. Where is that going now?
So right now we are, there's a couple parts to this. We've been dealing with a application to FEMA from the 2019 Halloween flooding. We're still in that process. We finally did a site visit with FEMA. We finally got the railroad sort of responding to our requests. The one thing that there are a lot of things we're missing, but one of them is we're supposed to get an annual update from the railroad about their intention. We received one. We did not receive one yet this year. I've been told it's on its way, but I haven't gotten it yet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done on the railroad to fix it, to make it runnable again. I shared this with the planning committee. There were a lot of questions about this when I spoke with them last month. We can't do anything until the railroad tells us what their intention is. Are they willing to spend the money to do the updates and the fixes to the bridges that needs to happen? It's about $300,000. We don't know that yet. There's been a lot of conversations about what else we could do with it, how we could loop tourism into this, what other sorts of projects we could do. But until the railroad makes a decision about their future intention, our hands are kind of tied at this point. So, there are some other factors that we have to look at. Obviously, the money that we got from the EDA to do the, was it $6.5 or $5.5 million project a few years ago. There are some factors included in that. Part of the money that we got from the EDA was that there was a commitment from the railroad to keep this up and running for a certain amount of time. Obviously, that's not happening right now. So we're sort of in a standstill. We're still moving forward with the FEMA application. We're hoping to get the funding to do some of the fixes that were affected by that flood, but there is a much bigger issue here. There's a lot more that needs to be fixed with the railroad to get it back online, up and running. If they are going to do that, there's this marketing piece that we will do, to try to get people to want to use the railroad. But we don't want to put that effort into it until we know what the railroad's intention is.
Thank you.
Anything else, Carrie, you'd like to share?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mike?
I have nothing.
Okay. I think we're done on the 239.
Okay. The first 239 is in Baybridge. You need to bring it up, or?
I'm working.
Okay.
All right.
Very good, because there is a map involved. Right there. All right, so this is on Route 7. That's why we're reviewing it. They have zoning. And the zoning law, anything less than 8 feet from the porch has to be go through the ZBA. In this case, the porch is going to be built 3 feet from the property line. I guess there's no objections from the neighbors, and I don't think there should be any county concerns, but we'll open it for debate.
Went through the local.
Yeah, all right. So if not, we'll have a motion to approve.
Make the motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Okay, the next one is in Afton, on the corner of Route 7 and 41. This was a restaurant at one time. It was a hair salon, and I'm not sure what it is now, but it's gonna be opened back up as a takeout restaurant. So it's on the state highways, that's why it's reviewable.
You're gonna strictly take out,
Yeah, strictly takeout.
Okay,
so there won't be no park.
there's already parking there, so. Any questions or concerns?
what does the DOT have to say about the driveways?
They haven't responded yet. I think I got this 2 days ago or Friday. So I sent it on Friday and I have not heard back from DOT yet.
So you do our standard motion to approve pending DOT comments.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Lastly, at the last minute. This is the Berean Baptist Church in Bainbridge. It's on County Route 39, which is kind of the East River Road of parallels Route 7. I'm not sure which of those signs, because I just read it, is today. There's all these signs in the picture, but which, if it was a pole model sign or a ground model sign. So,
It'll so they like it'd be like a ground level sign.
Okay,
So they just
alright.
send a bunch of examples of
Right,
what
yeah,
they're going
okay.
for.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So the reason this is so late is because they started this project without going to the local board, and they caught on. And to try and stop them from continuing, they told them they needed this review,
So
which
it's
they
on
did
construction,
anyway.
right, yeah,
But
okay.
so yeah, that's
Okay,
why I was so late.
yeah, okay, that's fine. Any questions or comments? Now I'll have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned.
Do we need a motion to adjourn? Sounds like Ted made the motion.